You know, I would walk in the gym and he'd how you feel? I'm fine. I was fucked up, but I'm not gonna let him know. You know, he is. Well, I find out years later he ends up calling my wife, asked him, you know, how's Dave doing? It's like he can't even get out of bed. You know, he's so fucked up, and so I would say at that point, you know, I think a lot of my shoulder injuries, a lot of his back injuries, you know, a lot of the injuries that we accumulated were because we pushed that all the way to the brink, past the brink.
I'm Mallory. I'm an intern here at elitefts.
I'm the angry clown. Top three training partners over the years, that's easy. First would be Louis Simmons. A lot of people know that I trained at Westside, but they don't know that, you know, at Westside there were kind of groups when we trained. And during dynamic work, we'd train in groups of 5. During squat training, it would be in groups of 2 or 3. I squatted with Louis from the time that he came back, and whatever year that was, probably for 9 years. And then the accessories we'd break off based upon weak points, but a lot of our weak points were the same. So Louis would definitely be number 1 because, you know, we beat the shit out of each other. And, you know, I tried to kill him several times, and there's no doubt that he tried to kill me a couple of times. So that without a doubt, I will remember the session. I can distinctly remember many training sessions with him, set by set, rep by rep, what was said, what was done. After that, I would put Meadows just for some of the crazy shit that we did. And after that, probably Jim, probably Wendler, because we trained together. We didn't, at Westside, he was in a different group than what I was, but there's a time period, you know, after that, and even a time period that kind of overlapped, where Jim was helping with my bench to try to achieve, you know, a bench goal for about a year, and made a really big difference, and was somebody that knew how to cue and coach very well. And when I train, I can only hear certain voices in my head. Some of them I get tuned out, some of them I don't. And if there was a fourth one, it would be Ted Tolson, because he's one of the other guys that I can hear and when they're cueing. So if I'm doing something that's either stupid, you know, for high reps, just challenge set type wise, or if I'm doing something really heavy that has some degree of risk or danger, I won't do it unless Ted's around. Or now that I have Matt Smith and another guy from Westside that I trained with for 20 years, have them around, then I'm okay. So that would be the quick answer to that one there. Is the table cracked? Yes, it's cracked. Yeah, Joey, it was you, dude. Yeah, it's been cracked for a while. We've left it that way. We're gonna fix it when we move, but until then, it's just part of the culture, man. It fits with the gym. And it's one of those things that it lasted for like 6 years without being cracked, and it's just like my frickin' phone. You know, I've never cracked a phone screen, but then I cracked it last week and I cracked it again today. So I know as soon as we fix it, it'll crack again next week. So it's still good. Best program for a 55-year-old. I'm going to address this in a blog post because that really has to deal with training age and there are a lot of health history stuff, because I know some people that are hitting all-time records. You know, Louis squatted 920, 940 at 52 years old. So I have to know, the context has to be given, and to be able to answer that in a video without any context it's almost impossible, because what's true for one is going to be so completely different for another, especially the older you get and the higher the training age is. What gave you the idea to start Elite FTS? I was working as a personal trainer. I was powerlifting. I just started to begin having some tendon issues, so I was seeing physical therapists. I was consulting with Louis with a lot of strength coaches and universities, and I was going to a lot of personal training conferences, and I realized that there was a lot of shit talk between each demographic. You know, powerlifters hated bodybuilders, bodybuilders hated powerlifters, strong. You know, strength coaches thought powerlifters, you know, were all drugs and gear, and powerlifters thought strength coaches sucked because they didn't have people squatting 800 pounds. And there was just a lot of, animosity between all of them. But I was learning from all of them and able to help extend my career greatly and extend my health greatly, and thought, how cool would it be if I was able to take all this information and then put it on a platform to let other people disseminate it for themselves. So it wasn't started to be able to put programs out to help other people. That's why I've always said that our demographic are people who put training as one of the top 4 priorities. We're not putting programs out there to show people how to train. Any program that we would ever put out is to be an example to help people learn how to train themselves, because there's hundreds and hundreds of other websites that would just give you a boilerplate template on how to train. I wanted to take what I was seeing throughout all those different demographics and show other people that you can look outside your own little box to become better at what you're doing, and also show each one of those different fields in the industry that there's more commonality than there is differences, and that we all probably agree on 90%, and we can all learn from each other. And that was close to 18 years ago, and it's a goal we still strive for today. And fortunately, I think that we've done a pretty good job of doing that, and I've had a great group of team and staff and so forth over the past 18 years to be able to help facilitate that. But that's why it was founded. That's why it started. Kenny Patterson, man, how do I make my triceps bigger? You have no right to make your triceps bigger, dude. They've already been big enough. Kenny at one time held the all-time bench record, and I could be wrong, 3 or 4 different weight classes at the same time. The dude was like, I'm gonna exaggerate, he was like 4'2" with 30-inch arms, but I mean his freaking triceps were enormous. And that I trained in Kenny's group, great, strong as shit. Another one of the early, I say mid-level West Side guys, because we came in through the 90s. Great times in there. I mean, one of the best bench pressers of all time, without a doubt. And a perfectionist on the bench too. So it's funny because he was known for his triceps, so it's kind of funny to read that. You have any other ones while these are coming?
Yeah, Riley Com asks, what's the scariest thing Louie ever had you guys try at Westside?
A lot of them I can't say on camera, but the bands were pretty fucking nuts. I mean, when he brought the bands in, I've told the story before, but we were having breakfast and Louis says, Dave, look, I want to go to this basketball clinic before we go into squat and see this guy about rubber bands. And I'm thinking, I worked as a trainer, I'm thinking, the rubber bands with the handles on each end. Kind of don't get what this is all about. And so I go, and there's a booth there, and there's the bands that we kind of see, something similar to the bands we see today. They're an older version. They weren't layered, they're rubber. And I mean, there's all different sizes, and I'm looking at it, and the guys, there's stretching, there's all kinds of stuff that are being demonstrated, and all I'm thinking is I am not laying on the ground and fucking doing this stretching stuff. It's hard enough to lay on the ground to begin with, let alone all this other stuff. And so Louis buys all of them. I mean, all of them. So I'm walking out with 2 handfuls of bands. Halfway to the gym, I ask him, what are we going to do with these? He says, well, we're going to put them on the bar, and we're going to use them like chains. And I go, oh, fuck, all right. And so at the beginning, it wasn't so bad because they would kind of flap a little bit at the bottom. You attach it to the bottom of the monolift and then put it up on the bar. Then we would sit down, it would flap a little bit. And that's where it started. And it was me and him, and actually that was just me and him. I think there might have been one other person at the time. And we just kept working up with the bands. And then shit, over the next 12 months, it ended up it might have been, say, 120 pounds of tension at the top and 0 at the bottom. Over six months, it was like, no shit, it was like 600 pounds of tension at the top and 400 at the bottom. I mean, it was just beating the shit out of us. And, I would walk in the gym and he'd, how you feel? I'm fine. I was fucked up, but I'm not gonna let him know. I find out years later, he ends up calling my wife, asked him, how's Dave doing? It's like he can't even get out of bed. He's so fucked up. And So I would say at that point, I think a lot of my shoulder injuries, a lot of his back injuries, a lot of the injuries that we accumulated were because we pushed that all the way to the brink, past the brink of what would be acceptable as far as the extreme forces that were being put on there. But looking over the long haul of the whole thing, his guys today don't have those same issues that we did. So I look at the West Side from the 90s to 2000, 2002, is we had a lot of great lifters that came through there. We had some really genetically gifted lifters. We had some partially genetically gifted lifters, but we had lifters that were willing to do anything to get stronger. And I see that looking back, I'm not speaking for Louis as being an experimental time, where he had the guys that were willing to do anything at any cost and didn't give a shit and just beat us into the ground. But he found out what was too much with us. And now when I look and see the lifters that come out of the gym today, he doesn't have those same issues. So he was able to learn from us to evolve his program, which is a good thing, because sometimes I think you need to fall off the edge to know where the edge actually is. As long as you learn from it and you just don't keep throwing people off the edge, it's a good thing. So that would be it. I mean, there's fear, scare, it's all kind of relative on how it's defined, because what would be scary for me may be completely different for somebody else. So when somebody asks about fear and what was the scariest thing, for some people, just taking a 1 rep max is a scary thing. For other people, just it's all relative. So the best advice I can give with that is make sure you're always doing something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. So you learn how to operate outside that comfort zone. So you learn to embrace fear instead of run from it or avoid it, especially in training, because it's easier. Training is a more controlled environment. So you can embrace fear, you can deal with fear in training, which will help you to better deal with it in life. Because in life, a lot of things that happen that involve fear and being scared are not controllable. So if you can deal with fear in a controlled environment that you're trying to put yourself in to better accumulate yourself to that, you're going to react better to it when it hits you in an uncontrolled environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why it's hard to answer.